Hey folks, Jared here from Alabama Audible. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to take a moment to recognize this episode's sponsor, Runners United. Runners United invites you to experience UTSA football like never before. Get the ultimate VIP package for 4 with pre-game field passes, exclusive access to high-five players in the team tunnel, premium touchdown club hospitality, and complimentary tickets and prime seating. This incredible opportunity supports our UTSA student athletes while giving you and your friends memories that will last a lifetime. But don't wait, this special offer ends on April 26. Join the UTSA family today and elevate your game day experience at www.goutsa.co. That's www.goutsa.co. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Alamo Audible Podcast. This is episode 273. This is your host, Jared Campos, joined as always by my faithful co-host, Adrian Bermudez. And Adrian, happy Fiesta to you. I know we're celebrating remotely from Houston, but I at least have my Alamo Audible store Fiesta theme hat on.
Beautiful.
So I'm a little bit festive.
Yes, I love the festivities, sir. I do miss me some Fiesta. I was getting clips sent to me via text message of Battle Flowers Parade, Sosa coming down the main avenue, which I did have the pleasure of partaking in 2012. The cowbells dinging from the crowd, and then a couple of Nyosa shots, of course, which is really where my heart lies, somewhere in La Villita in old San Antonio. There's a part of me still at Nyosa. Yeah, and one day I shall make my triumphant return, sir. Until then, we'll keep it easy remote.
Did you see the new Sosa uniforms they debuted?
Yeah, and I tell you, the reception amongst the Sosa alumni circles that I keep up with has been very, very good.
Cool. I've seen the same from people that I know that were in Sosa, so that's great.
Yeah. Navy blue is sharp. It's clean. I like it. Really good stuff.
It feels uniquely San Antonio. I think we'll get a lot of love for it on TV broadcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, man. Happy Fiesta season to all who celebrate. Good old SA, dude. Gosh, now you got me jonesing for some Fiesta debauchery.
I always say I'm going to plan a trip just to go to Fiesta, and then it sneaks up on me, and I'm not prepared. So I'll have to put a calendar reminder in for next year in like February to book Fiesta accommodations.
Maybe I'll make that trip with you.
Oh, nice.
Do that.
Well, Adrian, it's a really special episode for us here. Second time we've had UTSA Athletic Director Dr. Lisa Campos on the show. Always super gracious with her time. And man, she really pulled back the curtains for us to show how this revenue sharing thing is going to work, how NIL operates at UTSA, what fans can expect with the house settlement going forward. So it was really informative. I feel like I'm pretty plugged in, and I still learned a lot. And I had a lot of preconceived notions that I'm going to have to readjust after speaking with Lisa in this podcast. So I hope I'm not overhyping it. I think our core fans are absolutely going to love this interview.
Yeah, this is really special insight, really incredible insight that we had the privilege of being privy to with Lisa, man, because she is, on the front lines behind the scenes trying to work out so many moving parts when it comes to the NIL house settlement and the many factors that branch off of it, and all the different ways that affects a university's athletics department. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many residual things to take into consideration aside from just sending revenue to players. And so, yeah, man, we really tried to peel back as many layers of the onions that we could in our condensed time. Lisa was very transparent and sort of sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly that they're sort of having to deal with and wade through. Really just phenomenal stuff, man. But Jared, I think that the overarching narrative of the NIL house settlement and its many moving parts still remains as a pretty foreign concept to not just casual fans, but also maybe some more plugged in and tuned in fans, more hardcore fans. I mean, this is still just a very new landscape. Um, there's news items coming out about this by the day, and I don't think that anyone really has an entire grasp of exactly everything that it consists of. But I think it'd be good before we got into the interview with Lisa to just sort of give as much of a background summary that we can in a simple, concise fashion, right?
Yeah, for sure. I guess like maybe to start us off, we can talk about what revenue sharing means in comparison to NIL, right?
Mm, yeah.
So
Yes.
the model that college athletics has been operating under for like what the past like 3 or 4 years, I don't, it's
Yep.
been such a whirlwind, I don't know. Ever since it became permissible for student athletes to make money off of their name, image, and likeness,
Mm-hmm.
all of that compensation has had to go through third party groups, right? So the schools have not been able to issue any kind of payments. It's all been like NIL collectives where, donors give to that collective, and that collective then, does agreements with the student athletes to pay them, or like direct engagements with businesses, right? So whether
Right.
that's doing a Nike ad if you're like a mega star for Oregon or Texas, or if it's as simple as like supporting the local barbecue restaurant by making an appearance and posting on social media, right? There's a wide range of NIL, and nothing is really changing there. All of the stuff that I just described is going to continue to be a possibility for these student athletes. But what's going to change in the House Senate, and we'll explain a little bit about that as well, is that now the schools will be able, once the settlement is approved by the courts, the schools themselves will be able to cut a check to the student athletes. And when we say revenue sharing, that's exactly what it sounds like, right? These athletic departments have revenue coming in from many different sources: ticket sales, TV deals, tournament credits
Yep.
for NCAA tournament, donor contributions, all
Mm.
that kind of stuff, right? And then it's up to the schools to decide, all right, how much of this income do we want to share back with our student athletes? What sports do we want to focus on providing revenue to? How are we going to let the coaches decide who gets what money and all of that? So we're really entering into a whole new era of like what I would say is Moneyball. And it's going to be so fascinating because there are going to be schools who be like, hey, like we're never going to compete in baseball, right? Like it snows half the year here. So we're not going to pay our baseball players much, if anything. And instead, like, we're going to pump our money into wrestling, right? Because like you can wrestle indoors. We've got a really strong program. We can compete for national championship. Whereas like a Sunbelt school is not going to have wrestling, but like feel like they have a good chance to go win big time in baseball, and you can get a better return on investment for that than like
Right.
putting a bunch of money into football or basketball where it's going to be hard to compete at that level. So there's going to be like a lot of interesting trade-offs and strategic decisions that every school in America is having to make right now.
That's right. That's right. And so what the House settlement is going to do is essentially, well, first deem that the universities are allowed to play players directly from their revenue, and then also create some sort of uh, budget, a bottom line budget that universities have to honor as far as how much revenue needs to be dispersed to players,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And
kind of the other way around. Like the NCAA has like essentially a salary cap of like schools can't spend more than 20 million a year
right,
on revenue sharing. The conferences can dictate a floor, which the American Athletic Conference has done. They were, I think, the first conference to have a floor for their schools, but the House settlement only dictates a cap
a cap, a
because,
maximum, right,
yeah,
right,
because they know like other schools have different revenue amounts, right?
different
Like you,
abilities, yeah, yeah,
right, you
yeah,
can't expect Lehigh to commit to 5 mil a year in comparison to Tennessee. You know what I mean? So
exactly. And so, yeah, no, thank you, Jared. I think I said it backwards. Yeah, and so yeah, and that cap has looked like, and you'll hear Lisa throw that number out a lot during our interview. Is it's been discussed and looking like it's going to be somewhere around the $20 million mark,
mhm.
right? But then the AAC can come out and say all of our schools must share at least $10 million with their student athletes as per AAC guideline,
Yeah,
right?
I think if I remember correctly, it's 10 million in support over 3 years, but that can include revenue sharing, additional scholarships, and a couple of other items that like it's not mandatory for them to pay, but they're going to count that as like investing in your programs. Because obviously the service academy schools can't do revenue sharing because
Crazy.
the whole being in the military thing.
Mhm.
They have different rules to follow there. So they give them that flexibility, but have made it clear that schools have to invest in and give some additional benefits back to student athletes that maybe other conferences won't be providing.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's the other part of it, Jared, is the scholarship aspect, right? And so we're seeing some change on scholarship limits and roster limits as well. Can you expand on
Mm-hmm.
that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's a good tie-in to talk about the house settlement. So when you hear the house settlement, house is someone's name. That was a plaintiff that sued the NCAA. NCAA knew that they didn't really have much legal footing to stand on to try to fight this. So they went into a settlement process with the plaintiffs that sued because they weren't able to access NIL
Mm-hmm.
for the duration of their playing careers, right? So what the house settlement actually is, it's essentially back pay. So student athletes that played for Power Four schools for a certain number of years are going to get paid, right? They're going to get a check cut to them. Now that money to pay for that is not just coming from those Power Four schools; it's coming from every NCAA institution, right? Even going down to the Division two level. So it's kind of like it's a raw deal if you're not Power Four, because you're going to have to give up some of your revenue that's instead going to former student athletes that played at a higher level of competition, right? Like
Right.
kids that played at UTSA for the past 10 years before NIL are not going to get any money. It's only the ones that were at the Power Four.
That's crazy.
Um,
And that's looking at nearly $3 billion in back pay at this point. The
yeah,
latest estimate was $2.8 billion in back pay to these former student athletes of the
yeah.
Power Five. Yeah, that's
Yep.
nuts.
So it's pretty crazy, and I feel like there hasn't been enough discussion on like how that settlement came to be as far as the funding goes. Because like I feel like personally the Power Four should have paid like 75-80% or something like that,
Mm,
because like they're the ones that have been profiting the most from the system and growing the most with like the outrageous TV deals they get. So then to say like like A&M Kingsville is going to have to give up a huge amount of their revenue from the NCAA to pay for that settlement. To me, it's morally wrong. But that's the settlement, and there's not a whole lot that I think the schools can do to fight back on it because the NCAA is the one that's being sued, right? And it's their call on how that's going to play out. So.
it's a job, man. It's a racket. That's what that
Yeah,
is.
yeah, it really is. But it is a one time thing, right? And I think the hope is like you do the settlement and then you avoid any future litigation. Revenue sharing is legal now, so like you should avoid it in the future. I'm sure there's going to be further contest around the $20 million cap, around the Deloitte aspect, which we'll talk about here in a second as well. But that house settlement should be approved in the next couple of weeks or months. I would definitely expect it this summer to have some resolution. The
Mm-hmm.
thing that is currently outstanding is to get into the point that you were talking about, Adrian, around the scholarships. So one aspect of the house settlement, and this is kind of twofold, right? Um, Part of it is to decrease cost because these schools are going to have to be paying these players now. But also some of it is to avoid the employee designation. So the number of scholarships that can be provided for each sport is changing. Or sorry, the roster spots and the scholarships, which are two different things. So if you look at a sport like football, you have a ton of walk-ons that have a roster spot but don't have a scholarship. So a lot of those roster spots are getting eliminated, and that's what is currently holding up the approval of the house settlement because the judge says, "Hey, you guys need to do some kind of phase out to avoid having all these walk-ons just get cut with nowhere to go. Now, on the
Mm,
flip side, there are other sports like baseball where they're changing the rules to, decrease the number of roster spots, but to increase the scholarship that's able to be granted to those roster spots. Because like right
mhm.
now, if you look at baseball, you get a lot of guys on the team that are getting 10% of their school paid for, 0% of their school paid for, 25%. It's super common.
Right.
So there's a lot of like kind of administrative type changes, but some of them that will have like pretty profound impacts on what the high levels of competition are going to look like for a lot of these sports. So it's going to be really interesting to see which schools uh, the P4 level and below, because I'm not sure every P4 school is going to go add extra scholarships for baseball because they may want to use that money to pay football players more and stuff like that. So just a lot of moving parts. It's really complex, but also kind of exciting, I guess, like in the amount of strategy that's going into it.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating. Fascinating stuff, Jared. Um, let's get into that other part of this conversation, and that is the job of Deloitte, which
Yeah.
is a massive auditing uh, giant, um,
Mhm.
auditing company, and essentially their job is to do just that. They're going to review deals and rev share payments. They're going to assign a fair market value to players, and then they're going to decide on whether or not players getting overcompensated based off of this fair market value. Is that sort of right, Jared? Is that
Yep.
pretty much
Yep.
the
That's
description?
right. So it's definitely the part of the house element that is probably the most opaque. Um,
Stickiest.
yeah, it's the part I struggle with as well. Like I can't imagine how it's actually going to work in practice, right? It's a core tenet of a free market economy that like your worth is what someone will pay for, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So like someone could look at my salary and say I'm overpaid. It's like, well, my employer doesn't think so. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, it's not like there's a it's not like there's a balance sheet to
right.
determine the fair market value of what each player is providing. There's not assets and liabilities here. I mean, what is this fair market value going to be based off of? How is it going to be assigned? Is it going to be fair? Can that be argued as discriminatory? Could we see another lawsuit happen
Yeah, and
based off of
is
it?
it going to hold up in court? Is it going to hold up in court? I mean, could you imagine
Exactly.
like you getting a job offer and then like some random agency is like, nah, that's too much. You need to shave 5K a year off of that to get it into a fair market range. Like
Yeah,
some
yeah.
of this stuff I've just learned to think of it as if it was like not anything to do with like college athletics. If it's just a normal commercial engagement, and like some of the stuff is just
Would
bizarre.
make
Like it would
absolutely
never
no
fly.
sense. It make absolutely no sense. Yeah, it feels like some sort of dictatorship
Right.
type of rules being implemented through the NCAA as a
But
governing body, and there's a lot of questions around the legality of how the Deloitte and fair market value rate is going to hold up, and Jared, not only that, but uh, NCAA executives are actually creating a separate entity to police the cap, the fair market
hmm
value
hmm
assigned by Deloitte, and to usher penalties to
yeah.
go out and get you if you are not playing by those rules,
Right,
and
because the whole intention is like if you look at these SEC and Big Ten schools, all of them are going to hit the 20 million cap overnight. That's no problem to them.
sure,
So then naturally, it's like, okay, how do we get a competitive edge, right? And you still have your NIL collectives that are not going to have that $20 million cap applied to them, right? So like this whole Deloitte clearinghouse situation is trying to prevent those collectives from being used as uh, another way to just bypass that and give those student athletes like a lot more money and to try to poach players from schools and stuff like that. So they're trying to avoid these like $2 million pay deals for a backup running back to like do 5 tweets and get $2 million for it, right? Because that's actually that's what it looks like
mm-hmm.
in practice right now. But we'll see if it works. I'm very skeptical. We'll see if they actually like levy penalties against any schools because, like, people know that you can sue and win. So
And so
we'll see how it plays out.
just to clarify that the Deloitte, what Deloitte will be policing is not just the rev share that universities are paying out to players, but the actual NIL dollars that players can
Right.
earn outside of rev share, what they're currently doing now.
Yeah, and so that's why you're seeing some crazy stories, some crazy transfer portal activity this year, where like some guys that are probably not that great of athletes are going to other schools and getting really big paydays because a lot of these collectives like know these rules are going to go into place soon, and so they're trying to blow through their cash ahead of that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Oh
Like Tulane's quarterback went to Duke and is like one of the highest paid quarterbacks in America right now, and like he's not that good, but like Duke had money to blow.
They got to get rid of it. They got to empty out those coffers before
Exactly.
before the Deloitte police come kicking down the door and levying penalties.
Mm-hmm.
It's that part is very sticky, Jared. I that's something that I see getting challenged fairly quickly into this new realm, if that is indeed a part of the landscape, and something that I don't think is going to have a lasting effect.
Yeah.
Once it goes to court one single time, they're going to have to do something separate about that. But what I could see needing to be policed is like the siphoning of university revenue through collectives. I think that makes sense to police. For example, big times Alabama reaches its $20.5 million revenue cap immediately, but then they turn around and they send $10 million to their NIL collective through the back door, right? And now that NIL can go out and pay players. That probably needs policing, right? Like maybe a university can't directly give to an NIL collective. But to say that this player has this market value assigned to him, he cannot make any more than that. That's ludicrous. That is not the US of A, damn it.
Right.
And that's not the capitalist economy that we live in. So, yeah.
So this kind of came up in our interview. I made the comparison of like investment schedules, right? Like people that have high compensating jobs, like they tend to have a contract that's built around retention.
Yes.
Where like you're not getting your full payments until you've been there for a year, and then you have like kind of the schedule where you get these payouts and stuff like that.
Cliff vesting,
Yeah.
Jared. This is what UTSA is in on their television deal with the AAC.
Yeah.
we are tiered into getting our full payout.
Yep.
Just like you have to work for 5 years before you're 100% vested on your employer match in your 401k.
Right, 100%. So like the whole Deloitte thing, to me, like I understand that they're trying to prevent this poaching and these outrageous deals and stuff like that. But I think they're going about it wrong because they don't actually want to do the hard work of like creating new rules and enforcing new rules that would require like contractual agreements between players and athletes to where they may not get the 500K they've been promised until they finish their 4 years there or something like that.
That's right.
So like you can leave that money and not attain it to go transfer somewhere else, but it's a huge risk to take. Same as like when you leave a job and your 401k has invested, like you could get a salary increase, but it's going to take some time to make enough money to make up for what you left behind by leaving that 401k.
And
so
this was a fascinating topic to talk to Lisa about because we kind of threw out the idea of contracts between universities and student athletes, and she threw out those contracts could very well have buyouts attached to them, so that if so-and-so wants to go into the transfer portal and make some more money at another university, that university is going to have to pay UTSA as if they were going to hire a head coach who was still under contract. This is bonkers to consider. Really, really fascinating stuff. But these are the kinds of things that we're going to see change the landscape of this whole NIL drastically, really drastically. And hopefully maybe calm down some of the craziness that we're seeing with player departures and immediate transfers and one and done sort of years with the university, and then seeing your guy on Sunday say that he went to another university, not the one that he spent 4 years at actually cutting his teeth, but the one grad transfer year that he did before he got drafted. Jared, the last part of this, and maybe the largest overarching part of NIL as relates to UTSA, is Runners United. And we talked to Lisa a lot about this. Essentially, the collective of collectives, right? So all of the UTSA's NIL collectives being sort of forged under one single umbrella, and this beautiful, easy to use website that's going to be rolled out for people like you and me to go and give to UTSA in whatever fashion and whatever specifics and particulars that we want, whether it's specifically to baseball, whether it's specifically to basketball or football, whether it's specifically NIL dollars, or if we want to send some money to scholarship dollars. So if anyone that's ever done UTSA giving before knows there's this really cool webpage that you can sort of designate exactly what colleges or what concentrations you want to give to. So we're going to get that for UTSA athletics, where you can specify the collective you want to donate to. You can specify how you want your dollars to be given to athletes, and to which specific programs you want it to go to. And that's something that Lisa is extremely excited about. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty fantastic website for us to use.
Yeah. All right. Well, if people enjoyed this segment, they've got a lot to look forward to in our interview with Dr. Campos. Before we take a Cumbia break and jump over to that, we do want to give some Patreon shout outs. Thank you, as always, to our Patreon supporters for keeping the lights on here at Alamo Audible, and making sure we have lots of support to bring in, guest writers, and, send Dan to some baseball games, and, season tickets and all that great stuff. So thank you guys all so much for your support.
Right. And Lisa's appearance is not a paid appearance. Just throw out that caveat.
We've never paid anyone to come on the show. Some podcasts do that, but I'm like,
nah.
No one's ever asked for payment either. But,
nah.
For the record.
For the record, let it show. Yeah.
Well, thanks to our board of trustees members. That's Digiteek, John Otwell, Gary and Ruben representing the UTSA Brookings Tailgate, Ray Redding, Brandon Grill and the Grill Realty Group, Andy Elizada at Proficient Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon at Seeker LLC, Javan Townsend, president of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, Ryan Squares, expecting father. Congratulations, Ryan. Waterman Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Wayne Gonzalez and the Runners Rising Project, Brandon Padron, Runners United. And our big money donors as well: Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Esperdequeta and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdle, host of Around the Birdbath, which you should definitely be listening to and following our blog post, as UTSA Baseball is on an incredible run right now. Number 20 in RPI as of like 10 minutes ago. Thanks, Javi, for sending me that update. Also, Jacob Cavazos, board president for the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, UTSA King Bowser, Maddie, and Home Field Apparel, where you can use UTSA One's Home Field to get 15% off of your first order. So, Adrian, without further ado, we'll go ahead and hit the Cumbia break, special Fiesta edition of the Cumbia break, and we'll roll that interview with Dr. Campos. Thank you guys all so much, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. As we mentioned in the intro, we have the distinct pleasure of welcoming back for the second time UTSA Athletic Director Dr. Lisa Campos back to the show. It is great to have you back. Thank you so much for making time out of your very busy schedule to chat with us.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me. It's, the first time around was really fun, and I must have done okay since you've invited me back, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, we were joking off air that your lighting is so great. I mean, you're really becoming a natural, this podcasting thing.
It's a great building.
It's the hard part to nail. Oh, yeah, of course. It's the beauty of the race, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I'll kick us off with the first question. I mean, still some moving parts with the House settlement. I think most of our listeners are probably familiar with the mechanics of that. We've talked about it on the show a lot. with the knowledge that it's not set in stone yet, are you feeling any sense of relief that there is maybe a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to revenue sharing, or is it just like this whole other world of problems that is just like you don't even have time to uh embrace that, just getting ready for the next, somewhere between?
Yeah, you know what? We've been planning for so many months. There's been so many behind the scenes things going on. So we are really anxiously anticipating this settlement to finally be approved. I think April 7th, there was maybe people were thinking, oh, we're going to get the decision. We knew I had sat in some NCAA meetings, so I knew that most likely wasn't going to happen April 7th, that it was going to take, this judge has never ruled on the day of an actual hearing. So we knew there was going to be some, days to weeks for this approval to happen or for whatever the next step is. So we are anxiously awaiting. Again, we've put so much planning behind this, that we're ready to have the rules, in place and for us to move forward.
And even though it's been around for a couple of years now, and Jared mentions our regular listeners are up to speed, but I don't think that casual fans necessarily are. NIL is still kind of a very new and foreign concept, I think, to casual fans. With Runners United launching, could you give your simple summary or maybe your elevator pitch for Runners United to the casual Roadrunners fan who goes to one or two games a year?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably just start with more of a evolution of this, right? So a few years ago when NIL was first introduced and first approved, people might forget that UTSA actually, we were first on board with this. We were still in Conference USA. We were the very first school to roll out our plan, which is really at that time education, helping our student athletes brand themselves. We came out, with what our strategy was going to be. The tough part of that was that the law really didn't allow us to engage with the collectives. And so fortunately that has evolved to where we are now with this house settlement. So in the process, we've really tried to do some education with our fans, and we'll continue since, when the house settlement comes through, there's even more education. But, Runners United, it was built so that you had one-stop shop. I think people are getting confused in the market about what's 210 Inspired versus Runners Rising versus City Fans 210, and where do I give and how does this all work? So that's why we did Runners United, even obviously before the house settlement, to say, here's a one-stop shop. Here's what each collective, what their objective and their mission is. And now donor intent, you give to where you want. And then now we're going to have an additional part of that universities can now participate in direct rev share.
Yeah, and Runners United, my understanding is it's run by Playfly, which is one of UTSA's partners. Sure, you're seeing across the country like some different approaches to how to handle revenue sharing and the fundraising aspect, the distribution aspect. What led you to look for a third party partner to handle that versus going in house? I'm sure there's some pros and cons involved.
Yeah, for sure. So, just to think about it, Runners United is the overall arching program, right? In Runners United, there's segments. So part of that segment is a subscription based, right? And that's run through Ascend and through Playfly. There's also a Playfly Max, which is a direct business approach that Jordan Pelt, our general manager, is going to every small, medium, large business saying, here's our student athletes. Can we make a partnership? And then, of course, there's the fundraising that has to be done so that institutions UTSA can participate in this rev share. So it is, I would say we're sort of a hybrid. We have some components that are internal and we're working really hard. And then we've outsourced, like I said, to Playfly Max to help run the direct NIL with businesses. And, as we contemplated all of that, we knew that we've had such a tremendous relationship with Playfly, who oversees all of our multimedia rights. They're selling all of our sponsorships and they have crushed it. And they're, pretty new. We were one of the first properties in the state of Texas. Now there's others, Texas A&M and Baylor and some others who have got on board with Playfly. And then Playfly Max, again, there's, Baylor has Playfly Max and some others. So they are, it's a new space for everybody, but they are doing an incredible job helping us navigate through this. And they just have a lot of resources and a lot of just access to things that are going to help us with this direct NIL for student athletes program.
So with giving, whether it's a business or an individual, there's general giving, and then there's specified to the sport, to the program, down to the player, I believe. Can you just sort of expand on that?
Sure. So, and we cannot wait for the settlement, and then we can roll this out on a kind of a one-stop website that we plan to do,
Okay.
because there's a lot of different ways that you can give to UTSA athletics, and it is always going to be about what is the donor really interested in. So, are they interested in giving to scholarships and operations? Are they interested in giving to facilities? Are they interested in giving to
Mm.
NIL? And under the NIL and Rev Share, which is again the Runners United. Again, there's going to be that subscription base. There's going to be direct giving to the institution. Do they want to give to football? Do they want to give to soccer? So we'll have a platform that if someone wants to give directly, and then of course there's going to be, like I said, the Play Fly Max where they're working with businesses directly. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for our fans to participate in the way that's most passionate for them and how they want to contribute and help us continue to have a championship caliber program. But when you think about the rev share, how I've maybe simplified it for folks is basically it's institutions being able to give direct NIL, collectives being able to give NIL, which will look different for the NCAA, and then the additional scholarships. I think a lot of people we're not quite talking about the additional scholarships that are going to be provided through this rev share and through the settlement. But those are really the components of how we're going to continue to engage in this ever evolving process, and how our donors can give as well.
Lisa, you should have known Alma Audible would be the one to ask you about the additional scholarships. We have done our research. I'll save that question for later, though. One thing I hear a lot of confusion. I'm confused myself. The truth probably is still not decided until the settlement's complete. When it comes to revenue sharing, is like the entire budget of the athletics department is kind of up to grabs for you guys to decide how that's divvied out, or are there special designated buckets of money that you're able to share?
Yeah, no, really how the rev share of what you all are hearing at the 20 million, how that was derived was that the P4 took 8 revenue streams. Don't ask me to quote those off the top of my head, but I can look them up. But they took 8 revenue streams, averaged the last 10 years of P4, and that's how this magical number of 20 plus million came to be. When you're sharing that directly through the institution, that's the only requirement is you can't go above the 20 million. So you can take, any source of revenue and share that through the direct NIL with student athletes.
Wow. Okay. That makes sense. I guess
Does
then it does. It does. You got a $20 million budget. You can take that 20 million from anywhere, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've seen previously people are like, oh, it's only ticket sales or it's only TV revenue, but it sounds like any form of revenue for the athletics department, regardless of where it comes from, could be shared.
That's what I gather from what you just told us, Lisa.
Yeah. Those categories you talk about, that's how that 20 million was derived. It was these 8 rev categories, which included the ticket sales, bowl, dollars, etc.
And so, and I guess this is where your job is really getting complicated. Whenever we zoom out beyond NIL, how does reallocating those funds impact other financial goals that the athletics department has in mind? How does RevShare impact these other investments, like the timeline for facility improvements, for example?
It's a great question. Yeah. So that we've been really talking about that for months and months to our coaches is what are your true priorities? Because everything can't be a priority, right? And for every coach, it might look different. There's some facilities in our department that are still a priority to coaches that they know if we don't get our facilities right, it's going to be harder and harder to recruit caliber student athletes. Some coaches, they're in great facilities and their total focus is NIL and direct rev share. And then there's other coaches who are saying, I need more players on my team, so I need the additional scholarship. So we've gone through all of that. We've gone through, some things that seemed really important maybe a year ago and maybe not as important as compared to these other priorities. So what we are charged with is really going out and generating this new revenue. We have talked about reallocation of resources, but our main priority is really bringing in new revenue so that we don't have to reallocate and we can continue to provide the services we've done. We've provided our student athletes and then grow in that revenue share model.
Are you guys looking at like additional advertisement placements that maybe weren't possible in the past or weren't a priority before?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we're pulling a lot of different levers, right? We know we're going to have to sell more season tickets. We know we're going to have to raise more just philanthropic dollars. We're in the business of now, providing more experiences. I think you might have seen that during football last year, that towards the end of the season, we started doing these fan engagement experience opportunities and had some great success. The Play Fly Max is another lever we're going to have to pull. And then, of course, to what you're talking about, the NCAA is now starting to relax some of those rules. Before we couldn't have a sponsor on the field. They've relaxed on that. We're talking about jersey patches. We're talking about naming rights of conferences. And so we are in the game of generating revenue. And I think the ways of thinking about it in the past and opening up those opportunities is what we have to do collectively as an industry.
The Whataburger orange is very similar to the UTSA orange. If anyone has any connects over there, slip them a word.
That's right.
Wow. So when it comes to prioritizing the funds that are coming in to NIL or to rev share, is there sort of a way to prioritize? We know football is the cash cow, right? And so that's going to get their share. Is there a way of prioritizing the non-football programs into what their allotment is going to be or what their share is going to be?
Yeah, those are tough conversations that I've had to have with all of our head coaches, because we definitely have prioritized some sports in year one, knowing that some sports are just going to have to wait till year 2, year 3, maybe. But we looked at really where can we be the most competitive? How can we support those programs? Who might be at the least competitive advantage from a facility standpoint that maybe the direct rev share will help them move forward. So, we've identified some of those sport programs that we really need to invest in to really move the program forward. It doesn't mean that not all of our student athletes are going to be able to participate in this. Again, Play Fly Max, as they go to a company and they say, hey, we want to support this program, we're not going to turn that down, right? But for a handful of our sports, we've said we're committed and we're going to provide you these dollars. And then what was really helpful too was the American Athletic Conference. Obviously, they've given us we all voted on the 10 million over the next 3 years, and they're giving us a lot of flexibility. But in that process, they also provided us data of what every sport was, what we're projecting that the sports would be giving in rev share. So that gave us a lot of guidance too, and that helped us be competitive in what we're doing moving forward.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that a little bit more. I mean, it was very impressive to see Tim Pernetti kind of lead the way for the ASC to my knowledge, the first conference that agreed upon a spending floor, which I really liked. I liked that a lot more than a spending cap, right? What are some of the behind the scene insights you can share around those discussions that happen across the league as far as preparing for revenue sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of discussions. We wanted to be really thoughtful. If you all get to know Commissioner Pernetti, you know that he is very forward thinking. He wants to position this league, wants to put us in the best position. And as the presidents, as our athletic directors, as the whole board looked at it, is that how do we continue to differentiate ourselves amongst other conferences? And to your point, we were the first conference that came forward and said, here's our commitment. We're starting at 10 million over the next 3 years. There was some discussions. Is there value in a ceiling as well? We had those conversations. But Tim is just very forward thinking, and again, wants our conference to be really differentiated.
So at this point into it, how does the department feel clarity wise, confidence wise, as far as how the details are being panned out? Are the coaches to that understanding? Are they able to parlay this information into their recruiting conversations.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. As we committed to and I'll be really transparent, football, men's, women's basketball, baseball are the sports that we've really provided the resources to. Obviously, again, a lot of our other sports are still going to be able to participate. But those sports, we let them know, like, here's what we are going to do. And when you go out recruiting, what you can build your roster off of. And
Wow.
again, you think about baseball, 11.7 scholarships for 34, a roster of 34. Like, Pat knows we need to invest in scholarships. So we were really flexible with him. As he's gotten into the recruiting, he's like, well, maybe I need to do more on NIL. So it's
Mm.
ever changing. As basketballs went through the recruiting, the market's always changing. And so we had more conversations about, hey, is that the right number and what's happening out there real time? And, I trust my coaches. They are boots on the ground. They're hearing, they're in the battles, and they continue to give us great information on, which helps us, make decisions and shift when we need to.
Yeah, and when it comes to that recruiting process, are the coaches kind of given like a rough budget of like what they can expect to share with incoming recruits, like a year in advance, or is it more fluid than that?
Yeah, I mean, we'll figure this out as we go, but that was this year is the first year, and again, if this house settlement doesn't go through,
Right.
we'll have to
We
pivot.
may
But
have to just delete this whole thing in 2 months. Who knows?
right,
Yeah.
right. But all indications is it is going to pass. So even some of the agreements that in writing that we're putting with our recruits, giving them the number, we're putting language in there that this is with the house settlement passing. But yeah, to answer your question, the coaches, particularly those four coaches, know what their budget is, and then we let them work that through in their roster. And as they were out there recruiting, they could let those recruits know. And our current student athletes, retention is a big thing, and the transfer portal, it just recently closed for football. Still going on with basketball. So there's, they needed to also know what that number was for the retention of those players.
With and it sounds to me like y'all have already started to reach out to create that additional revenue stream for that $20 million. How confident do we feel in the progress so far with the investment or the buy-in from San Antonio area businesses and the other outlets y'all are reaching out to?
Yeah, I mean, from past experience, this community is so supportive of UTSA and UTSA athletics in particular. And Jordan, who's only been with us for about 6-7 weeks, who again is Playfly GM, Playfly Max GM, he has met with multiple companies, and again, big, small, medium, and they are learning more about NIL. They're understanding, how this new world is, but very receptive. And I think for a lot of different reasons, whether they want a championship caliber program with UTSA or at UTSA, whether they want the marketing for that company and they see how UTSA student athletes are influencers, or they're just UTSA alum who say, this is how we want to give back. So a lot of different reasons why individuals and companies are supporting us, but the reception has been very positive. As Jordan has been out there, I'll say that I think there was some NIL fatigue. We see it on social media. And that's not specific to San Antonio. I think that's nationally.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been really fortunate again when you do it in the way it's intended and there's mutually beneficial outcomes, people can really get on board with it.
Yeah, when it comes to that subscription model for Runners United, right? So most of our listeners are already RAF members, right? They've been supporting the program for a long time. My understanding is like the benefits for RAF will continue, and then if you're also a Runners United member, you'll get additional benefits. Is that accurate? If so, could you maybe share some details?
Yeah, for sure. So that, yeah, RAF will continue to be, and again, with RAF, this past year, we were able to start even allowing loyalty points
Mm-hmm.
for donors that were giving to the collectives, right? That they were filling a missed part of that, and we were able to provide that opportunity. And people love their loyalty points, and
Oh yeah.
particularly when we're going to postseason and they get some access to those things. So that was really important to our donors, and we heard that. And so that will continue. We're going to continue to have to build RAF and that membership and those contributions. And then the subscription base, the Runners United subscription base is really like an inside look, right? Of getting the articles and getting some of the gear, and so it's more, again, it's more of a subscription that you're getting something in return, and you're getting kind of the insider's view of what's happening with UTSA athletics.
So let me ask you this, like, knowing that I guess any revenue within the athletic department can be shared with the student athletes. If let's say I'm a fan and I want to give $200 a month to UTSA, like, should I split that $100 between RAF and $100 between Runners United? Like, should I not worry too much about it? Should I give 200 to one place? Like, that's some of the questions I've been getting from people, and I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Yep, absolutely. That we get that question all the time too. And our response is, what's your passion? What do RAF is really about scholarships and operations. Again, going back to, there's some donors that care nothing about NIL, think it's ruining college athletics, and they want to continue to give to scholarships, particularly first gen students, our alum who were first gen, like they want to give to that educational, that operations part of the side of it. There's some who want to see their name on a building. They want to, sponsor a office, and they want to give to facilities. And then of course, there's going to be those that really care about the rev share and the NIL. So again, once this is all solidified, we are going to have a really comprehensive website that gives, all the buckets, and for people to really give to where their passion is, where they're going to feel really good about their giving and how it's going to impact, they can feel that impact in what's important to them.
It sounds like it's going to look really similar to UTSA Giving, where, you can get on this site and you can specify very specific programs that you want to give to, and
yes,
everything across the board is on there. And so whenever you talk about this website, this is kind of the image that I'm seeing in my head.
Yep, absolutely. There's going to be a box that says Runners United. Here's all the different ways to give to NIL, which is the rev share. And yeah, if you want to give $200 every month to baseball, you can click there and give that. Or if you want to give 100 to baseball and 100 to football, you're going to have that opportunity. So we're going to try to make it as seamless as possible for our donors.
That's really cool. It sounds like Playfly is more than just sort of a liaison between you guys and these businesses, but they're actually actively doing these negotiations as well. But I imagine it is also sort of this collaborative effort that maybe they make initial contact and then they bring you in as a part of these negotiations, or maybe coaches involved with reaching out to these businesses as well. How collaborative or how not collaborative is it?
Yeah, no. So from, Playfly, for our corporate sponsorships, that's Robert, who's the GM for that. And he's been here now almost 2 years. And then Jordan, who's doing the Playfly Max for the individual NIL opportunities. It is so collaborative between those two individuals, between our entire department, our marketing department, our communications. And then, of course, now we've brought in certain coaches to start having conversations. So we have a every other week meeting where Jordan from Playfly Max is meeting, with Karen and Jeff and Austin and who am I and Coach Hallmark, and we are just brainstorming. We're collaborating. We're being strategic, and so they are very highly involved. Those coaches in particular are highly involved in what's going on and how we're, again, being strategic in approaching these businesses. And then, of course, they'll bring us along to meetings. I can also see bringing the student athletes along to those meetings, because that's who's going to be part of their their marketing branding now. So there's so much opportunity out there, and a lot of different ways that we're going to approach it.
Cool. It sounds like Playfly Max has access to like the resources within UTSA. Like, they're not just silo in another office building somewhere across town, right? It sounds like they're pretty deeply embedded.
Yep, they are in our offices here in the race building. Funny enough, we've only been in this building a few years, and we are starting to lose space in here
Oh
because
man, okay.
all the
All
new
right.
staff that we're bringing. So it's been a lot of fun to be a part of that. But yeah, Jordan is completely embedded. He is in my office almost a few times a week, every week. So there's very strong collaboration and strategic planning going on.
When it comes to the distributions for the revenue sharing, are coaches just pretty much given leeway to use their budget, if you will, how they see fit, or is there like a standard amount that's paid for every player on the same team? Like, what does that arithmetic look like, I guess?
Yeah, no, giving a lot of flexibility to coaches. Like I said, I have hired great individuals who know their business, who know what the recruiting world looks like. They are boots on ground, like I said. They know the market. Now through the collectives, there will be a separate process. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Deloitte and how the market value is going to be happening for the collectives. But internally, our coaches have a lot of flexibility. Again, I'm not going to get in their business of how just like I don't tell them who to recruit or what play to run. I'm going to give them, a lot of autonomy to build their roster. And, Coach Trailer and I have talked about this. You look at this model of a GM. And as a head coach, you lose some control about that, right? If you go a professional model with this GM, and so Coach and I are really aligned about that. He wants to be making those decisions, and that's really important to him. And he's the one who, at the end of the day, is the head coach, and he wants to make those decisions. So we are in alignment, and definitely giving them the flexibility because they know they're out there, on the recruiting trail. They know what that market is and what it's going to take to recruit some of these student athletes and to retain our student athletes.
Yeah, I think I saw in the past couple of weeks, Stanford and UCLA hired new positions that are above the head football coach to oversee the football operations. I just could not imagine putting anyone over Jeff Traylor. That's crazy to me. But that model is becoming popular. It's very fascinating.
There's
right. And it's the pro model. It's the pro model, and that's how that works. And so we're probably going to see more of that. And but again, Jeff and I have a really strong relationship, and I trust he's proven he knows what he's doing. And that, to your point, that model would not work with Jeff.
There's a Dallas Cowboys joke somewhere in there, a Jerry Jones joke. We're glad you're not Jerry Jones, Lisa.
Well, I don't know if I should admit this or not, but as we go into more of a professional model, I took a team of my staff and we went to Frisco, and we met with the Cowboys and picked their brain about what does this professional model look like. And so it was really fascinating, and we got a lot of good insight. I don't know if that's the how you all feel about me talking to the Cowboys, but we thought that was a good starting point.
I like it. Most of our fans like it, but no, that's incredible market research. I hadn't even considered something like that, but yeah.
I probably shouldn't share that. Now other ADs are going to go do the same thing.
Fascinating. What other larger scale changes do you see this having on the athletics department?
Yeah, I think, I just talked to someone about this yesterday from a culture standpoint, from a employee satisfaction, that we're seeing a lot of change, not just at UTSA, but nationally. That most of our staff got into this business to really help mentor and develop students, and you were able to do that from freshman year to senior year. And we're finding a lot of staff nationally in intercollegiate athletics is really missing that now, that sometimes you're only getting to influence a student for a year and you're not seeing that progression for 4 years. And so to help our staff evolve and understand this is a new world, and how do you still get satisfaction and passion with what you're doing in this evolving world. And, I suspect that it won't be what some people who got in this business a long time ago. We've seen it across the nation, that there's a lot of retirements happening. There's a lot of people getting out of this business. And so that's a big change from a staffing perspective, right? You got staff who are supporting these student athletes who now are maybe making twice or three times more than what the staff member is making, and that's an adjustment
Yeah,
from a
go hire
cultural.
your own tutor.
Right, right. This is, a change
Yeah.
in the culture of our business, but we're all evolving. We're all figuring it out. I sit with different groups of ADs, and these are all things that we're all going through, and I don't think any of us have the perfect answer yet. Time will help us. I said it the other day to a group of uh, news editors that the data's not out there. There will at some point be a longitudinal study of the impact of students being at a school for only 1 year, right? And the data might show that made them more resilient, that made, like there was some really positive things about that, or maybe the data shows something else. We don't know yet.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm deeply concerned personally. I think a lot of these kids that are going to 5-6 schools, I just can't picture it being best for their long term. So, hopefully the industry, the apparatus finds a way to discourage that, I guess,
Mhm.
while also still honoring, people's personal rights and freedoms. But yeah, it is tough to see. And I think about, for myself as a former student, just those bonds, those relationships you build over the years, it's really invaluable, so
It
it's tough to
is.
see, and knowing a lot of student athletes are missing that experience right now.
Right. And then for our fan base, we gotta help our fan base figure out how they, the reaction to that of,
Hmm.
you don't get to see a student athlete maybe for the 4 years develop, and what does that mean for your passion for the sport or for the program. And so again, there's going to be a lot of studies done about this, and in the meantime we're going to continue listening to our fans and our student athletes and our staff about how do we best evolve and approach all of this change.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's true. It's difficult. It's difficult uh, being like the Wild West now with transfer portal, and NIL being here all at the same time. Guys jumping around, and then you seeing your guy on an NFL Sunday game day or on an NFL draft being announced from another school, right? And you oh, he's a Roadrunner. He went to UTSA, and so yeah, that stuff hurts, and it makes you think. You talk about the pro model and how much influences that has had and sort of shaping the dynamic here. How far away are we from players, student athletes having to sign multi-year contracts with the university's athletics department? I mean, is that something that is on the table in the future? It seems like we might be headed that way.
For sure. And and there was already multi-year NILs, right? Or letters of intent. A lot of the P4 schools were already signing students for 4-year scholarships. And so yeah, we're gonna move in a direction, if schools aren't already, of doing a multi-year NIL rev share contract. And what
Hmm.
are the implications? Does it look more like a head coach's employment contract where there's some buyouts to that? And
Hmm.
Right.
because we spend a lot of money recruiting and developing these students, and if they're going to leave, is there again a buyout for that? So all to be determined, but all things that for sure all of us athletic directors are thinking about.
Yeah, I always think about like investment schedules too. I mean, if you look at just the typical commercial landscape, it's, anyone can leave a job, but you probably have some 401k money that's tied up, and you're
Yeah.
giving up a pretty good amount if that were to leave. So, you know,
Right.
I've never seen a reason that couldn't work in this revenue share model, and we'll see if things develop that way or not. Um, so this question might be a hypothetical, or maybe you've heard from your peers, because I don't think you've had to hire a coach since the House settlement has really been locked in. But do you foresee that as part of like the negotiation process when you're hiring a new coach? Is like, okay, yes, here's my salary, but like, what's the rev share percentage going to look like? It seems much more complex now.
For sure. Yes. I was trying to think if I've had that conversation with any coaches I've hired, but absolutely. It's not going to be any different than when hiring coaches now of what's my assistant coach's salary base,
Hmm.
what is or pool, what's my operating budget, what's my travel budget. Like when we're recruiting coaches, we're laying it all out, like here's your budget, here's how we're spending it. That will be a component 100% for some sports, right? I think in our evaluation too of who we were providing this rev share to, we also recognize that this NIL and rev share hasn't hit all sports. You know, there are some sports, you know, who've had really candid conversations. It's like, that's not even a conversation in our recruiting world right now. Will that happen soon? Yes. You know, we saw it with football, then it hit the basketballs, then it hit volleyball, soccer starting to fill that. Baseball was higher up there. So there's definitely a trickle down, but not every sport is talking about NIL. There's and again, when we talk about this and we talk about the millions of NIL deals, you know, sometimes we're just talking about the 1%, and we forget that there's still a ton of student athletes who are staying committed to schools, who are finishing out their 4 years, who aren't getting the millions in NIL. So,
Yeah, like
but back to your original question, yeah, that this will be another bucket of how are we investing, and it will be a recruiting component for recruiting coaches for sure.
right, like we've recently seen some SEC programs lose their men's basketball coach to Big East programs, and like on the surface, it's unimaginable. But if you think about that $20 million cap, and you don't have to fund a football program, it's kind of a
Absolutely.
no-brainer. So it's very fascinating for sure.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. Or like the issue with, and this is a total other scope of things, but you know, international student athletes not being
Mhm.
able to participate in NIL. And I don't know if there's ever been any conversation about that with the greater courts and the powers that be to make some changes there, the NCAA bylaws and visa issues. And I mean, there's a whole other Pandora's box, but that's got to be something that's discussed along the way too at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Those conversations are happening at campuses. People are handling it different. People are finding creative ways.
Mm.
Some stories I've heard, I just can't believe, you know, making international students cross a border in Canada or Mexico to get their money and then come
Oh my
back.
god!
Like
way.
all these loopholes
Wow.
or creative ways of being stated. It's really unbelievable. So that definitely needs to be fixed and figured out for the benefit and health and safety of our international student athletes.
Yeah,
That's a
I
great
mean,
point.
we are geographically located at an advantage if we needed to go that route. I think we've got about 300 miles to the closest border crossing, but probably something we want to avoid altogether.
Right.
That's outrageous. Yeah. I mean, we've run into the issue with just doing photo shoots and sitting merch. And so, yeah, it's certainly something you would like to see those student athletes get the ability and the power to be able to earn as well.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you've talked a bit about, you know, increasing scholarship allocations, right? Which is one of the student athlete benefits in the House settlement. I think baseball is the area that you see the most of. I don't know the numbers. I wish Dan, our host for Around the Bird Bath, was here. He would have all the stuff memorized. But you know, you're going to see a lot of SEC schools have a ton of additional scholarships. But with Title IX, you have to balance that with scholarship opportunities for female student athletes. So with the current scholarship allocations for UTSA, like if you were going to increase baseball scholarships, would you have to fund a new women's sport, or is there room to increase the support for the sports that are already on campus?
Yeah, so I think what a lot of people don't know about Title IX, it is actually based on your overall student enrollment population. So not necessarily about the number of men's sports versus women's sports and scholarships. So Title IX looks at what is your overall student population. Here at UTSA, we are more female than male, so those are the numbers we have to really manage. And then Title IX also looks at, so that's from a participation standpoint, not scholarship, just how many participation opportunities are there. And then from the scholarship standpoint, not to get too technical, but then they compare your participation and make sure that you are within 1 percentage point of how you allocate your scholarship. So it's a little bit complicated if you're not a math major of a math equation that we're constantly evaluating and making sure again that we're being cognizant of Title IX. But you know we also you know as we go through that also know that there's just great opportunity. You know, again, you think about baseball. I tell people this all the time. Baseball, and no offense to Coach Trailer if he's listening, baseball is our highest percentage sport of winning a national championship. Like if UTSA wants to win a national championship, let's invest in baseball. And you look, there's so many examples of it. And I tell people when we were at Myrtle Beach for the bowl game, just talking to the locals there, the impact that had when Coastal Carolina went on that run and did what they did, the impact to the community, the impact to that institution, the enrollment, like why not UTSA? We are in Texas. This is a rich baseball state. We have an incredible coach that we need to retain. And we gotta do, we're so far behind in facilities for that sport. We got to do that. We got to invest in scholarships. So we also recognize, obviously taking Title IX into consideration, but then also knowing that we can invest in a program that can do something really special here.
I can attest that one of my neighbors from Victoria, Texas, went to Coastal Carolina because he saw them win the College World Series.
Wow.
It happens. It's crazy, but it happens.
Yes, it does.
Fascinating. Well, one last one, Lisa. Where is UTSA positioned competitively amongst their conference peers when it comes to NIL and rev share going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that might be difficult to answer in terms of like when we got the data from the American Athletic Conference, however many months ago, projecting what people were planning on spending in rev share, self-reported. We really looked at that data and said, okay, if we want to be competitive, this is how we need to invest. And so, particularly for those 4 sports, we're not at the top, but we're certainly not at the bottom. We think we're going to be really competitive. As our coaches go out and recruit, those numbers seem to be fluctuating. So it's going to be a ever evolving process of what is that market. Again, I think there's going to be some help with Deloitte and the collective part, but from an institutional perspective, we don't have to go through Deloitte. So the market, we're going to continue to rely on coaches who are in, like I said, in the recruiting battles and understand that. But what we had planned for, given the data we had at the time, we should be competitive for sure in those particular sports. And but we'll continue to evaluate that.
Let that be a call to action to anybody and everybody listening. Let's get to the top.
That's right.
All right.
I would
great,
say, the
great
call
segue to sign us off by telling people how they can sign up for Runners United, right?
Yes, I was going to say, what my experience has been, I think we've had the best fundraising years, the last few years. We've just, from the Bold campaign, athletics has really led the way. So it's just been really incredible, and a huge thanks to the community who have had a vision and supported this and want to be competitive. And the community wants to win. And so I'm so thankful. But we also realized is that our community thought that you can only be a donor if you're giving $1 million or $500,000. So my call to action is that every dollar matters, whether it's $1 a month or whether it's $10 a month. All of it matters. And if we want to be a competitive program, you see this everywhere, is that the community gets behind it, the donors get behind it. That's how it works. So we just implore our community to continue to get behind this. Every dollar matters. You don't have to be $1 million donor. You don't even have to be $1,000 donor. Join the RAF at $50, I think, is the entryway. So there's opportunity for everybody. And when we roll out this website, there's definitely going to be, people are going to be able to click where they want to give. And we're always open to having conversations with folks.
Awesome. This has been a fascinating conversation. As always, Lisa, thank you so much. So much to chew on. Thank you for showing us behind the scenes, behind the curtains, the complexities of all the situation. I'm excited. I think it's so fun to think about the stuff and the strategy aspect of it. It's really exciting for me. But thanks again for your time.
Yeah, you can't be stagnant at all. This is ever changing, and that's what's really exciting. And maybe tomorrow all of this might look different as well. Who knows? I appreciate you all.
Keep up the great work, Lisa. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Take care.